So I live in Bowie County, Texas. Now I'm originally from Southeast Texas, and didn't. I feel like it almost gets to where, like, when you hear other people's encounters, it's almost like a script, but it's not. It's always, well, this was never on my radar. This was nothing I ever thought would happen. Um, I two and a half, or I'd say 2 years ago, um, I'd seen the Patty film once or twice and never really thought, if you told me it was somebody in a suit, okay. If you told me it was real, okay. I'd never even heard of Legend of Boggy Creek, didn't know anything about that, and surely didn't know anyone that's ever seen one of these things. Um, and until I moved to Bowie County in Northeast Texas, I noticed that people had these cutouts, either of metal or wood, in their yard as decorative and kind of an interesting decoration. But all right, and as a joke, I on this minister friend, I mean this little group that I'm on with some friends on Facebook. I said, hey, I said they're from up in this around this area, and I said, do y'all have these Bigfoot walking around here? And I said, because I see a lot of these things in people's yards and things like that. And, they come back up with some jokes. I was really halfway joking anyway, or I really was joking. I was just one of my people. I had all these, was this a new fad, a new thing? And it's just a new, I don't know. It's not how I'm not the kind of guy that's going to put pink flamingos in my yard or a Bigfoot cutout, namely because my wife says I'm not. And I really wouldn't want to anyway. But anyway, so one of the guys on there, he didn't respond, but he private messaged me and he said, look, he says, down where I'm from, and he actually grew up an hour north of where I grew up. He says, I was fishing along the Sabine River, and a very, very, very secluded spot. I mean, he goes, you'd have to, very few people, you'd access it by boat, but he accessed it through the woods. And he said there were some footprint tracks that came from the wood line across the small little beach area there and went into the river. There was a sandbar there, I believe, if I remember right. He goes, those tracks were every bit of 18 inches long. And I like to joke around and cut up and stuff. I can be serious when it's time to be serious. But he's a guy he just doesn't have it in him to make something up as outlandish as that. And because it was him, if it would have been anybody else, I'd have thought, okay, there's going to be a punchline to this here in a minute, you know what I'm saying? I'll follow along and see where this funny story goes. I might want to share it later, for an easy laugh. But because it was him, I was like, really? I just mentioned back, I said, really? And he said, yeah. He goes, I also have a relative around the Mena, Arkansas area that he said, it was an uncle, I believe. He said he'll go to his grave believing that he's seen one. And and I was like, really? I said, oh, okay. So I just sort of kind of, so what we can find on YouTube and or Google, and then you gotta weed through all the, I don't want to say crazy people, but you have to weed through all the crazy people. In fact, I will say that. And then a lot of goofy stuff on YouTube. And of course, I'm still don't believe this. I thought it was interesting that he shared that with me. But I'm still not even what I would consider even on the fence about this yet. It was just kind of interesting. And I ended up watching some stuff that was like, okay, it's kind of interesting. And well, I believe this person. It seems kind of legit. And then I listened to one guy and I said, well, I think he's making that up. But in my mind, they're not really real, not like legitimately real. If there's a handful of them, and then so it just kind of started a journey that I've kind of been on for maybe a year. This was the end of 2018, about this time in 2018, around to about this time last year. And I found some really good, or what I felt was really good folks to listen to. I really enjoyed listening to the episodes of the Bigfoot Outlaw Show, and Matt and Coombo and all them, Bear, and when I listened to their whole playlist on YouTube. I turned around and listened again because I felt like I was getting an education and just kind of learning. But I'm not going to go out in the wild. I'm not really a hunter per se, and I do like the wood. I used to hunt more when I was a kid, but just don't really have time for it now. I'm never going to see one of these things, experience one of these, but the stories just seem really neat. And another story, I mean to name drop, if that's what you call it. The one story that I heard on YouTube that just really, I would say he put me on the fence as far as like, hey, there's maybe something to this, and that was Kerry Arnold's personal story. I was floored. I was like, because I've never met the man. I just met a guy 5 minutes ago that knows him well, but he's just your everyman. He's just your every day go to work kind of guy. Just I feel like he represents that. And his story, in fact, when I listened to it, it's like a 2-hour thing on YouTube. As soon as it was over, I started listening to it again. Then when I had more time, I finished listening to it, and it's just an incredible encounter. And just how I also felt like he reacted the same way I would have. It would have impacted me to really see something like that. That, of course, I know a lot of people just get right back out there and, but if you're not really prepared to see something like that, it's kind of a different deal. And so I definitely understand how he responded, and I don't blame him for not wanting to go hunting. And because it's definitely it can impact you in so many ways, but it's life changing. And started kind of learning a little bit more about it. It's kind of interesting. Well, next to where I live is a couple acres come along the side of where I live, and then it opens in from behind our property and goes the other way to the north as well, and it opens up into 92 acres. And as I started learning about the subject of Bigfoot, just things I kind of picked up tips here and there. It's like, well, I know they can't live in there because there's not this, and there's not a water source, and this, that, and the other. Never would have thought they were there. But one day while walking across the property there with my wife and little girl, this was last November 19, this scream, this was at night, 9 o'clock roughly, between 8:30 and 9, this scream, we call it the scream, that's all, I don't know how else to describe it. The volume is unlike anything I ever heard, and the length that it held it out, I can't imagine. I have heard a large cat scream. That I was 20 years old, 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to unlock my grandma's front door. No porch light, no cell phone light. And then when the scream happened, my dad always told me, he goes, son, if you ever hear a mountain lion, panther, whatever you want to call them, scream at you, it makes a very distinct sound. You'll never forget it. Well, at 3 o'clock in the morning, because I was working nights at the time, I was living with my grandmother, and this thing decides to scream at me. I was already having a hard time trying to get the key into the door. Then when my knees were shaking so bad, the keys were literally jingling in my hand, made it even more impossible. But also the urgency to get the key in the door went up 100-fold, and it's just totally just freaking out. But this was, looking back on it, the pitch wasn't near as high, but it was a scream. But it held out maybe 4 times as long. I mean, me and my wife and my little girl, we stopped in our tracks and cut back. It was kind of to maybe our 8 o'clock, I would say. And as we turn, it's still screaming. Now, we expected someone to be standing right there screaming at us, and there was nothing there. I mean, it's another 20 yards to the wood line, and I don't know how far into it was. And my little girl, she's 3 years old, she's holding my hand. Daddy, what's that? I don't know. And we just ended up going to the other building, to the house. And I went back out there with a light, didn't see anything at all. Well, I'm still not processing, even though by this time I'd heard all these stories about screams just like that. The other just ironic thing was, my one friend that I can talk Bigfoot with, who was from Southeast Texas, was actually working up in North Texas and was going to come and spend a couple days with us after he finished this job up. before he headed home, because the next week was Thanksgiving. And so 2 nights later, he was there, and we were just standing on the corner outside of the corner of the house, listening to those same woods, or standing out there. Of course, I'd already told him where the scream came from. It was further up by the road, and away from where it kind of opens up into the acres, actually closer to the road. And I live on the city limit line. That's the other ironic thing. And so we're standing there, and it's just as plain as I'm talking right now. You could hear 2 sets of bipedal footsteps. Just and one was those in front of us, walking through the woods, walking from our left to the right, or from west to east. We're facing north. One was about at 1 o'clock, maybe 1:30. The other one was more like at 10 o'clock, but they were both walking in the same direction. And you are not going to walk 10 feet in those woods at night without a light. There's no light out there. There's nothing shining. People don't go into these woods at all. I know I said I'm right there at the city limit, but trust me, no one walks these woods. There is an old 4-wheeler trail. Every once in a while, you may hear something ride way in the back. You can hear it way off, but anyway, just plain as day, you could hear them walking. Well, fast forward to February of 2020. I was headed around 11:30. I heard something as I was walking from the house to the other building. I heard what sounded like a huff, and in my very limited Bigfoot encounters, other than just the scream and then hearing the footsteps, I picked up some things and heard that they'll give like a huff. And that's kind of what I heard. But I'd also heard a lot of people tell that, okay, well, if they're around, it'll get really quiet, And so I'm trying to run everything through my little bit of education that I have on the subject. And as I'm walking, and I heard that huff, and it wasn't loud. One thing I was trying to train myself to do is not try to, if I hear something, just break my neck and turn and look. Just listen to it. Now, the scream, I don't care who you are, you're going to respond and react to that in a serious way. I was actually very proud of myself. I didn't respond with a scream, or my wife, or my little girl, but mainly I was glad I didn't. So as I'm thinking the thought, when I thought I heard this huff, this was Valentine's night. When I thought I heard the huff, I remember thinking I could hear some crickets, And I said, well, at least the crickets are still. And I never got to finish the thought. It was like you flip them off of the switch. And I just stopped in my tracks, and I had to turn. The sound was coming from my right. I was walking to the west, and so it was my right to the north of me. And I had to turn left to go into the building. So I went inside, and my wife was in the house at the other building. And I called, and I said, hey, I think, I'm not sure, but I think something huffed. Now, the huff came from exactly where the scream came from. And this was months later. The scream was in November. The huff was in February. And so I called her. I said, I think something huffed at me. I said, well, walk back out there. She said, okay. And so I walked back out there, kind of stood at the corner of this little sidewalk, and off back to where our house is in the corner. There's a real dark corner right there on the side of the house, which is before we moved in there were some lights on that side of the building, which we later discovered that had been knocked out with rocks. And one rock was actually still inside the plastic casing where the bulb was at. And it's a real dark little area there. And that's where we've went in there, and we have found limbs broken 9 feet up. They were still connected, and they were snapped down and tucked in behind a tree. We found trails that I am 6'3" roughly, that I can just walk through there without even hardly brushing my shoulders or anything. And I'd even brought a guy out there to look at in there one night, and he was a very expert hunter. And I said, look, I want you, and actually it was after this encounter, let me get back to this on February, because this will make more sense when I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'll go back out there to see if this thing's going to huff at me again or scream or do something. But then I heard this commotion out by the house in that dark side by the woods there, because the house is on the back of the property, but it's right up against the woods. I mean, like feet up against the woods. In fact, I had to snap some limbs recently because the trees are rubbing the house. And I hear a rustling going on out there, and I run back into the other building, call my wife, and say, "Hey, there's something going on outside." And so, without leaving outside the building, the house, she was listening. She could hear it through the wall. She goes, "There's something." Yeah, she goes, "I hear it. I can hear it." But we had someone coming over. She said, "It's just rustling. It's rustling." And then as their headlights turn in, it stops on a dime, and there's never another sound. And so, and I'd always been told, hey, if you, one of the best things you can have on you is a light. They don't want to be in the light. They don't want light shine on them. And so a couple of nights later, maybe a week later, me and my wife was there, and she says, no, I asked her, I said, "Hey, do you want to go outside and maybe do a whoop and see if we get something?" We just trying to hear something maybe. We went to another town not far from us, and got our first whoop and wood knock. It was really incredible. And so we was like, I did a whoop, and in a little while it replied back. So we was like, well, let's try this at our house and see if we can get something. And there were times where I realized where I would walk from the house to the other building that I would have that nervous feeling, and sometimes I wouldn't have it. So we walk out just on the corner of the house, and I have this feeling in my stomach. I'm not comfortable at all. And I'm trying to ask, I want to know if my wife is feeling this. I said, "Hey, are you nervous at all?" She says, "No, you're here." I said, "You're an idiot, because I am scared to death right now." And she goes, "Oh, I'm fine." I'm like, and I didn't mean to call her that. It was just I love my wife. Now we talk, we joke with each other a lot, but I was so scared, and she's and I'm supposed to be her defense, but I'm ready to fold like a cheap tent. I mean, this is not much of a defense. But I had my spotlight in my jacket pocket, just the round end of it. I could barely get it in there, and I just wanted my hands free to cup around my mouth and make this loud whoop to see if anything would happen. Well, I find out I was even kind of reluctant in doing it because I just felt nervous, and I did it. I let out this loud whoop, and instantly a bluff charge. I don't know what you want to call it. And it's like I said, it's so weird how everyone's encounters with certain things. It's like I said, it's just almost like you're reading off the script, and you're really just describing the same things. It literally sounded the old classic. It sounded like a bulldozer just coming through the woods, and it's big. Well, my wife, who was standing right beside me, who's not scared at all because I'm there, as soon as this thing starts moving, she's standing to my left. I have to reach over to my left to pull my spotlight out of my pocket, and before I can even turn, she's already not there. She's already gone. She realized that her defense was also very flimsy compared to whatever this is that's moving in the woods. And so I pull the light out as soon as and it's still coming, but as soon as I turn the light on, I mean, it is graveyard silent. So I just backed a few steps up, then walked in the front door. We locked the door, and we didn't go back outside. And so that was in February, and that was, I think the bluff chart really scared me more even than the scream, just because it was closer, and I felt like it was closer to us. It sounded, even though the scream was so just piercing, and like I said, I refer to the scream as life-changing. I really think I was more scared hearing the bluff chart, because you could hear it's moving now. The scream was a scream, and you never heard nothing move. This is moving, and it sounded like it's coming towards us. And anyway, that was pretty intense. Well, we had in the place where we had heard some wood knocks, where we got to hear a wood knock and a whoop reply back to us, also in that February, but an hour or so from our house. This past June, we've had some other really neat encounters out there. We've had in the broad daylight, we had a mimic a bird call, and it was probably the most pathetic attempt at a bird call. And it was like, I said, was that a bird? And even my wife, she was not outdoorsy at all. She's like, that was not a bird, because it was also ground level. And then the funny thing about that was, as soon as it made this, and it was real deep sounding, it was like a Barry White out there trying to intimidate a bird, and as soon as it did that, and it's ground level, straight up a pine tree, an actual bird, called back that same sound, but it was a bird that responded to it. And I was like, okay, now that was a bird, and they've never been aggressive in that area or whatever. But we've been out there and had a few times. Every time we kind of pass through, we'll go out there and just do a whoop and just kind of see what happens. We had something. I brought a friend of mine out there who I kind of told him about some of this stuff, and he came up to kind of check some things out. We met out there, and as soon as we pull up, the windows were down. It's like 1 a.m. We had this was in early June of this year, 2020, and I'd heard a wood knock as soon as we stopped, and that's from where we had the terrible attempt at the bird sound. We've also had some stuff that was just right there by the side of this road, and we never have to get off the road. We can just whoop and they'll respond, or they had once before. And so I hear the wood knock as soon as we kill the engine. We get out, and then several hundred yards off, you heard a whoop, almost like, I kind of took it as the wood knock was letting the other ones know, hey, there's someone here. And then it was maybe a minute later, one way off, whoops, almost like, hey, is everything all clear, kind of deal. And it just got silent. So this is just obviously this theory. We don't know. They wouldn't come out and give an interview to clear some of this up. They're difficult that way, as I've learned. This is just a theory. Maybe if it doesn't respond back, it lets it know, the other ones know, hey, I've got company, kind of deal. They're not going anywhere. Just a thought. Don't know that for sure. In my very limited 2-year education, I have yet to receive my master's in Bigfooting. But anyway, well, within a minute, several hundred yards off, a great whoop come back. I looked at my friend. I said, what animal in East Texas makes a noise like that? He goes, there's not one. And I said, well, there is one. I said, but it's not supposed to be. And so he spent a few days with us. He spent, between doing all of our stuff, we were doing activities and things. He was searching the internet, YouTube, and anything, trying to find something that remotely come close to that whoop. And the closest thing he came up with was a gorilla. And of course, like I said, we didn't see anything. We also had that one that I think gave the wood knock. He was in some thick brush, but he was slowly moving to our left, and we heard him getting closer to the road. My friend, actually, the last time we heard him move, and it's not very many animals that I can think of, and like I said, I'm not a seasoned outdoorsman, is purposely being quiet, purposely trying to slip. What I'm saying? They're just going to either run and just get out of the, unless it's a predator of some sort, or it's purposely trying to be quiet. As far as I know, I'm sure there's, I said I don't know everything. I don't have my master's in all animals either. But anyway, so we had some neat stuff happening there. Well, I went back a few weeks later, and it was during the daytime, to kind of see the area to where it was kind of creeping around slowly. You heard it slowly moving. You hear a little movement, and then it'd be a few minutes, and you hear a little movement again. It was slowly coming around, almost like in a radius from straight in front of us over to our, like starting at our 12, coming around to almost our 10 o'clock, to almost 9 o'clock onto the road. And so I said, I want to look at it in the daytime. And we was passing through the town, and we had our little girl with us. We don't ever go out there when we have our little girl, but I told my wife, just stay in the car. I'm just going to kind of just look at this area to see getting kind of behind all that brush to see how well it could. Sure enough, there was a ditch there, and I mean, I just knelt right down. Actually, I didn't have to bend. I could bend over and you couldn't see me, and I'm pretty tall, but I realized, oh yeah, he could. There's a little corridor, almost not a corridor, but he just easily moved through there. Something that big, or assuming that it's big. It's not like a house cat, obviously, but I could have slipped through there myself and just maybe not been as quiet as they are, but anyway, I decided to walk off the road and just walk into those woods, which I've never done, because usually we go out there, it's nighttime. I never felt nervous. I never had a feeling that anything was out of the ordinary. I just bailed off. I walked about 100 yards off the road. I was walking straight away from the car, walking facing north, and I heard it wasn't a whoop, it wasn't a bird mimic, but it was I don't know how to describe this. My wife was unable to describe it, but it was back toward the car. It was back to more of my 4 o'clock, between 4 and 5 o'clock. Now my wife's straight behind me at my 6 o'clock in the car with my little girl in there. And as I hear this sound, it's like it's a vocal sound of some sort. As I'm wheeling around to my right at my 3 o'clock, I catch the very back and the back of the head slipping right behind this tree, and it was really quick. I mean, I just caught a glimpse of it, but I don't hallucinate. My eyes don't play tricks on me. I'm just a little past 40. I still have better than 20/20 vision. It was daylight, summertime, 6 o'clock. It's still plenty of daylight. And the brief that I saw, I can give you a color. He was a really pretty, almost like pine straw that's come off of a pine tree, that kind of reddish brown. He was a minimum of 6 to 9 inches taller than me. I'm 6'3". He was roughly 70 yards from me. But I think that the one that was back toward the road, which I was walking all in those shrubs area right there. I didn't go all the way through there, but I think there was 2 of them there. And when they see me go in, they're trying to get one to come around and flank me, maybe to walk me back out I've heard that, they kind of escort you out more or less. And I don't know if it thought the other one that was moving around that I saw slipping behind that tree was already hid. I don't know. This is all space. It wasn't the same one, because the sound was more in behind me. I saw him straight at my 3 o'clock. Straight at my 3 o'clock. And I saw, it was a quick glimpse, but it's enough for me that when I saw it, I went, and I realized I'm 100 yards back to my car. I can see it, and there's obviously a sound of one not directly behind me, but still closer to my car than I am. There's one also level with me as far as distance away from the road, and it was probably between 50 and 70 yards from me to my right. And I just turned around and started walking back. As I get almost back to the car, my wife said, "Did you hear that noise?" I said, "Yes." The noise she's referring to is the noise that had me turning back to my right anyway. And then I get in the car and I said, "I think I just saw one." She said, "Are you serious?" I said, "Yeah, it was quick. It was a faint little glimpse, but I know my mind's not playing trick. I can't give those details. I can't tell you what his face was. I didn't see it. I saw literally, I guess we would say, like where your ear is back from where your shoulder is back. His shoulder would have been probably at my nose if I had to get. Like I said, he was taller than me by good. I could tell from that far his color, and he's taller than I am. I can't tell you if it was a female, male. I can't tell you that. And the other thing, the more I thought about it, was as fast as it was moving, I never heard it, which is the most freaked out I think I've ever been, realizing I know how much noise they can make in the woods because of the bluff charge, but to know he's moving that fast, or she or whatever, and I couldn't hear it. And also that feeling of I was telling a friend of mine, I said, before we had encounters right there next to the house, I started learning a little bit of stuff, and I probably learned a little, just enough to get myself in trouble. My first thought was, well, surely they can't be in the woods next door because this. Okay, they blasted that theory out. Surely, all my surelys, anyway, all my surelys they've gotten rid of. Surely, if I don't have that nervous feeling in my stomach, they can't be there. I didn't have that when I started walking into the woods off the road. My first thought was, I don't have that nervous feeling, that something's not right kind of feeling. The night we heard it whoop, my friend was with us and it was moving. That definitely had a wasn't felt right. The night I did the whoop and he decided to bluff charge, I was too scared. And there's actually been another time where I walked back into the house and I told my wife, I said, I'm actually too scared to go out there and do a whoop. I just don't, because we already had the bluff charge. So I recognized what I was feeling that night before the bluff charge. I had that feeling again. Something was not right at all. But I also realized then that you cannot rely on that, because I realized that I was there, and I'm not saying they're projecting that to make me feel that way, and they decided not to so they could try. I don't know. I'm not saying that. I don't know how to describe that or why that is, but it was one of those things where, surely they're not here because I don't feel nervous. I felt nervous 100 yards from the truck, and I know there's one in between me and the truck, and there's one 70 yards straight to my left, and I seen him. Yeah, nervousness set in then, a little after the fact. I heard a guy in my at a job I used to work at. These two guys were bickering and having an argument. It's getting pretty heated, and one guy he goes, I'm not scared of you. I'm not scared of you. He said, boy, you don't have to be scared of me to get knocked out. And that was kind of how I felt then. I don't have to feel scared for them not to, not be there. So that's just kind of what we've experienced. So many more people's stories. They've just, I kind of had a little bit of, I kind of got eased into it a little bit. I kind of learned a little bit about them before I was ever screamed at and hear them walking, and then my eventual sighting and whoops and things like that. I'm glad I didn't I listened to so many people tell their stories. I just heard one man tell me a story, 16 years old, what happened to him, and it took him an hour before he could speak. He was so scared, and his mom and his family didn't know what to do with it. He just couldn't talk, and I'm not equipped for that. I'm so thankful that never happened to me. When you're just kind of face to face with something and you're trying to, the square peg's trying to go through the round hole, and it's like, well, wait a minute, that's not supposed to be. And then, so I kind of had a little bit of an ease into it to kind of be on the lookout. This could possibly be here, and of course, this, I'll go ahead and finish reading from the same script everybody else does. And I say that as a joke. This is not a script I'm reading from. If you get one question answered, it just unlocks to 25 other questions. And you really never even got a real good answer to the first question you started with. And then those 25 other questions all have 25 other questions. It's kind of like Bigfoot's running a pyramid scheme with questions. You start with one and it never ending. And but anyway, that's my account. And it seems like we've had, right there by our house, it feels like it's more fall and winter time. I don't know. I'm not going to say surely, because I'm getting rid of that word out of my vocabulary. I want to say surely they're coming in maybe during hunting season. I don't know that for sure. I'm never calling another Bigfoot Shirley or anything like that. But anyway, so I'm kind of looking forward to maybe having some more encounters next to the house. I will not be whooping at them. Apparently they're not okay with that, and also I don't want to do too much there at the house, and because I do have a little girl, and it's just a lot of things there. I want to make sure my family stays safe. My wife did one night hear something hit the back of the house, just slap this back of the house. It didn't wake me up. She was sure I heard it, and she couldn't figure out how it didn't wake our little girl up. She was like, it was loud, and but I never heard it, and the woods are directly behind the house, and so. We'll see. Like I said, kind of getting that kind of year again where maybe we'll see some, or not. Well, I'd love to see them. I'd love to see them, but on my terms, far away. Don't sneak up on me and scare me half to death, But they're not very cooperative, I've discovered. But anyway, so that's just kind of what I've experienced, and like I said, 2.5 years ago, if you'd have set me down and said, all right, look, one day you're going to be sitting down and telling a Bigfoot encounter that you've had, I couldn't laugh in your face harder. I would put you in a box of okay, this is the crazy section. I just put that label on you and steer clear of you for any future. Avoiding crazy people is wise. That's good wisdom right there. But anyway, and so, but I've had a lot of times in my life where I look back and say, well, if I'd known I was be doing this, I would have never, or those things you never would have convinced me. This is one of those highlights, way up at the top. If you'd have told me I'd be into a subject of something like this, and it's crazy to think about, but I'm off the fence. I'm totally inside the fence now. Totally a believer. They're really real. They're legit. I am not an expert, because they surely don't stick inside my Shirleys. I know that for sure, but that is a surety. But anyway, so that's my story. That's it. Thank you so much.